She was screaming in labor at 3 a.m., every contraction ripping through her like fire, when she texted her billionaire husband one final time, "Tony, I'm in the hospital. Please come. I can't do this without you." But the reply that lit up her phone wasn't from Tony at all. A cold, unfamiliar male voice filled the speaker. The instant she hit play, "Step back, mother and babies belong to me now." Her trembling fingers typed the words that would torch her old life forever. "Then come and take them if you dare. May every woman in labor be wrapped in unbreakable strength, fierce love, and the kind of grace that turns pain into power. You are queens, warriors, the quiet fire that brings life into this world." If this story moves you, drop a like so it reaches every sister who needs to know she is never alone. Mission: 1,000 likes for every mother fighting in silence tonight. Comment: "I stand with Veronica if you believe no woman should ever birth her babies abandoned." The pain crashed over Veronica Thompson in merciless waves, each one stronger, dragging her under while the monitors screamed in rhythm with her body. Rain lashed the private hospital window like it wanted to break in and witness the wreckage. She lay alone in the luxury birthing suite she and Tony had chosen together, Italian marble floors, fresh orchids flown in from Hawaii, the custom bassinet with the Whitmore family crest embroidered in gold thread. Everything cost more than most people made in a year, and none of it mattered now. Tony had kissed her that morning, quick, distracted, already reaching for his phone before his lips left her skin. "Emergency board vote," he'd said. "I'll be back before you even miss me." She'd believed him, because believing was easier than seeing the truth. Another contraction seized her, so violent the bed rails groaned under her grip. Veronica fumbled for her phone again with sweat-slick fingers, tears mixing with the mascara she'd put on hours ago, thinking her husband would be here to see her become a mother. She sent the same plea a second time. "Tony, please, I need you now. Please come to the hospital." The message showed delivered. Then read. Then nothing. Minutes bled into eternity while the heart monitors beeped faster and faster, counting down to the moment her world would shatter for good. The phone slipped from Veronica's numb fingers and clattered to the floor. Read. Still read. No dots, no reply, no Tony. Just the relentless beep of the fetal monitors and the next contraction clawing its way up her spine like a living thing with teeth. She screamed raw, broken, nothing left to hold back. The sound ricocheted off the marble walls and came back to slap her in the face. A nurse rushed in, eyes wide. But Veronica barely saw her. All she could feel was the absence, the empty space beside the bed where Tony's hand was supposed to be, the silence where his voice should have been telling her to breathe. Another contraction hit, harder, longer. Her vision tunneled. She was slipping, drowning in pain and betrayal, certain the next wave would drag her under for good. Then the door exploded open. Not a polite hospital knock, wood splintered against the wall as a man shouldered through like he owned the building, the city, the entire night. Tall. Impossibly tall. Black suit cut sharp enough to draw blood. Tie the color of a midnight ocean. Rainwater dripped from his dark hair onto the marble, each drop loud as a gunshot in the sudden silence. Piercing blue eyes locked on her, and the air left the room. He didn't look at the nurses, frozen mid-step. Didn't glance at the shattered phone on the floor. He looked only at Veronica, sweat-soaked, trembling, crowning, and his voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Step back. Mother and babies belong to me now." Exact words. Same voice from the voicemail. Low, lethal, and utterly calm. The younger nurse gasped and stumbled backward. The older one tried to find authority. "Sir, this is a private delivery room." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. One look from those Arctic eyes and every person in the room took an involuntary step away from the bed. Even the monitors seemed to quiet, as if afraid to draw his attention. Veronica's heart slammed against her ribs. Terror and adrenaline flooded her veins, sharper than any contraction. "Who the hell are you?" The words tore out of her, ragged and furious. "Get out." He moved closer, slow, deliberate. Expensive shoes silent on the floor. The overhead lights carved shadows across the hard lines of his face, cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass. jaw clenched like he was holding back a storm. "Name's Lucian," he said, voice velvet over steel. "Lucian Vale. And I've been watching you a lot longer than you realize, Veronica." He knew her name. Of course he did. Another contraction seized her. She couldn't stifle the cry. Her body bowed off the bed, fingers clawing the sheets. When the pain finally released her, she was gasping, staring at him through tears she refused to let fall. "You sent that message," she rasped, from Tony's phone. Lucian's mouth curved, not quite a smile, more the promise of one. Tony's phone is no longer his concern. He stopped at the foot of the bed, close enough now that she caught the scent of rain and something darker, expensive cologne and raw power. His gaze dropped to her belly, then flicked back to her face, possessive and unapologetic. "I told you I was coming," he said softly. "You dared me." Veronica's blood turned to ice. "Then come and take them if you dare." She had typed those words in fury and agony, never dreaming someone would actually answer the challenge. Lucian Vale leaned in, voice dropping to a murmur meant only for her. "I'm here, Veronica, and I always collect what's mine." Outside, thunder rolled over the city like the sky itself was warning her. This was only the beginning. The contraction ebbed, leaving Veronica shaking and hollowed out, but fury filled the space pain had carved open. "Fix it?" She spat the words like poison. "You don't get to say his name. You don't get to say anything. Who the hell are you, Lucian Vale? And why are you in my delivery room?" Lucian didn't flinch. He stood at the foot of the bed like a dark statue, hands clasped behind his back, rain still dripping from the ends of his hair onto Italian marble that suddenly felt cheap beneath him. "Tony made a mistake," he repeated, quieter this time. The words soft and lethal. "And now I will fix it." Another contraction rolled in before she could scream at him. This one felt like her spine was being split in two. She arched, gasping, tears burning tracks down her temples into her hair. When it passed, she was sobbing ugly, furious sobs that tore out of her chest like shrapnel. "Get out!" She roared at him, at the nurses, at the universe. "All of you get out." But Lucian only stepped closer. "You want the truth, Veronica?" His voice was low, intimate, as if the two of them were alone in the world. "Tony hasn't been yours for months. The late nights weren't board meetings. The canceled trips weren't rescheduled. The woman wearing his ring in Mykonos right now, that's not a rumor on page 6, that's his future. You were the past he planned to erase tonight." Each word landed like a fist. Veronica's breath hitched. She saw flashes Tony laughing at charity galas while his hand rested on some redhead's back. The way he'd stopped touching her belly weeks ago, as if the twins inside her were already inconvenient. The cold kiss this morning that tasted like goodbye. She had ignored every sign because love was supposed to be blind. Turns out it just made her the perfect fool. "No," she whispered, shaking her head against the pillow. "You're lying." Tony wouldn't. "He signed the divorce papers yesterday." Lucian cut in, merciless. "Had his assistant courier them to my office for safekeeping. He wanted a clean break before the babies drew their first breath. Thought he could vanish, leave you bleeding and alone, and never look back." Veronica's world tilted. The monitors shrieked as her blood pressure spiked. A nurse rushed forward with an oxygen mask, but Lucian lifted one hand, barely a gesture, and the woman froze. "Look at me," he commanded. She did. She couldn't not. Those blue eyes were glaciers, ancient and unyielding. "I'm not the villain here, Veronica. I'm the consequence." Another contraction slammed into her, fiercer than any before. She screamed until her voice cracked, fingers clawing the sheets, nails tearing fabric. When the pain finally loosened its grip, she was gasping, staring at him through a haze of sweat and terror. "What do you want from me?" she rasped. "My babies? My life? Take the money, take the company. Leave us alone." Lucian's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind the ice, something almost human. "I don't want your money," he said, "and I'm not taking your babies from you." He leaned in, close enough that she felt the heat radiating off him despite the chill in his voice. "I'm taking them from him. There's a difference." Veronica laughed, then broken, hysterical, the sound scraping her raw throat. You think you can just walk in here and play God? I don't know you. I don't trust you. You don't have to trust me, he said simply. You just have to survive the next hour. After that, you can hate me all you want. But right now, your daughter is crowning. And the man who swore to protect you both is on a yacht in the Aegean pretending you never existed. He straightened, glancing at the monitor as another contraction built like a tidal wave on the screen. Push when the doctor tells you. Veronica. Scream if you need to. But know this, from this moment forward, no one hurts you or those babies again. Not even you. The next contraction hit, and this time she had no strength left to fight anyone, not Tony's ghost, not the stranger who now filled the room like a dark promise. She screamed, and in the echo she heard the truth she wasn't ready to face. Lucian Vale wasn't here to save her. He was here to claim what Tony had thrown away. And God help her, part of her was too broken to stop him. Get away from me. Veronica's voice cracked like a whip, raw and ragged. She swung a trembling arm toward Lucian, trying to shove him back, but another contraction seized her so violently her whole body jackknifed off the bed. The scream that tore from her throat didn't sound human. The doctor barked orders, "We need to get her calm or she'll tear." But the nurse's hands fluttered uselessly. Oxygen mask, cold cloths, soothing words, none of it reached her. She was a hurricane of pain and betrayal, and the eye of the storm was the man standing motionless at her bedside. Lucian didn't budge. He didn't touch her. He simply existed there, tall and unshakable, while the room spun into pandemonium around him. Veronica. His voice sliced through the chaos, low and steady. Look at me. She couldn't not look, even half mad with pain. Those blue eyes dragged her gaze like gravity. I own 49% of Whitmore Global, he said, conversational, as if he weren't confessing to holding half her husband's empire in his fist. Tony needed cash last year, quiet cash, the kind that doesn't appear on quarterly reports. I gave it to him. In exchange, he put certain contingencies in writing. Another contraction crushed her. She bore down instinctively, a guttural roar ripping loose. The doctor shouted, "That's it. Heads visible, keep pushing." Veronica collapsed back, gasping, tears streaming. You're lying, she panted. Tony would never. He would, and he did. Lucian cut in, calm as winter midnight. If he ever walked away from you and the children, everything shares. Voting rights. The penthouse, the vineyard in Napa, transfers to the trust I control. Tonight, at 2:47 a.m. He wired the final signature from Santorini. The second those papers hit my server, you stopped being Mrs. Whitmore. Legally, at least. The monitor screamed. Her blood pressure spiked red. The room blurred. Get him out of here. The doctor snapped at security, but the two guards who rushed in froze the moment Lucian turned those eyes on them. One look, and they backed out like scolded dogs. Veronica laughed wild, broken, terrifying. So you bought us? Is that it? My babies are your collateral? Lucian's jaw flexed. For the first time, the ice cracked. No, he said, voice suddenly rough. They're the only thing he ever created that isn't rotten. He moved then, finally leaning over the bed rail, close enough that she smelled rain on his skin and something darker underneath. His hand hovered an inch above hers, not quite touching, as if he knew she'd flinch. Tony's actions left you defenseless, he said quietly. I'm not here because of a contract, Veronica. I'm here because someone has to stand between you and the wolves he let in. And tonight, that someone is me. Another contraction slammed into her like a freight train. She screamed, fingers clawing the sheets, spine bowing so hard the bed groaned. The doctor shouted, "Push, Veronica, now." She bore down with everything she had left, rage, terror, grief, pushing until stars exploded behind her eyes. Lucian stayed exactly where he was, a dark pillar in the storm, voice steady against her ear. Breathe, Veronica. I've got you. I've got them. Just breathe. And for one shattering second, between the pain and the chaos and the betrayal, She believed him. She hated herself for it. But she believed him. Time collapsed into one endless contraction after another. Veronica no longer knew where pain ended and she began. Her screams had turned to hoarse whimpers, her strength bleeding out with every push. The luxurious birthing suite felt like a tomb. Now marble cold against her back, monitors shrieking like banshees, the scent of orchids choking her. Tony was gone. Really gone. The truth settled in her bones heavier than the twins pressing down inside her. She was alone, except for the dark stranger who refused to leave. Again, Veronica, one more big one. Doctor, Williams urged, voice cracking with urgency. She couldn't. She had nothing left. Lucian's hand finally closed over hers. Cool, steady, unbreakable. You can, he said against her ear, the first time he'd touched her. You already are. Something in his voice quiet, fierce dragged her back from the edge. She bore down with a cry that tore her soul in half. A rush of heat, a slippery release. And suddenly the room filled with a new sound. Thin, furious, perfect. It's a girl, the doctor announced, voice trembling with awe. They laid the tiny squalling bundle on Veronica's chest, warm, slick, impossibly small. Dark hair plastered to her head, fists already swinging at the world. Veronica stared through blinding tears, joy and grief colliding so violently she couldn't breathe. My daughter. Tony will never hold her. She sobbed over the baby's tiny body, pressing trembling lips to her forehead. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry he left you. Lucian stood motionless beside the bed, but his eyes, those ruthless Arctic eyes, were fixed on the child with something soft and dangerous blooming behind the ice. For the first time since he'd stormed in, the predator looked almost human. She's perfect, he said, so quietly she almost missed it. Veronica glanced up. Their eyes locked over the newborn's head, and something electric passed between them, recognition, maybe, or the first thread of a bond neither of them had asked for. Another contraction ripped through her without warning. Second baby's coming fast, the doctor shouted. Veronica, we need you again now. She was beyond exhausted, beyond thought. The world narrowed to fire and pressure and Lucian's hand still gripping hers like an anchor. Push, he commanded, voice rough with something that sounded like fear. She did. One more shattering effort, and her son slid into the world with a roar that matched his sister's. The nurse lifted him, and for a single heartbeat the room held its breath. Then Lucian moved. He stepped forward, no hesitation, no permission asked, and took the baby from the nurse's hands as naturally as if he'd done it 1,000 times. The infant's cries quieted the instant he was cradled against that black suit, tiny fist curling against Lucian's white shirt. He looked down at the boy, then at the girl still on Veronica's chest, and something ancient and possessive settled over his features. Both safe, he said, voice like gravel and velvet. Both mine to protect. Veronica stared, chest heaving, tears streaming. The babies were here. Tony was gone. And this stranger, this enemy, this savior now held half her heart in each arm. She should fight. She should scream. She should demand he give her son back. Instead, a broken whisper slipped out. What happens now? Lucian's gaze lifted to hers, fierce and tender all at once. Now, he said, we begin. Outside, the rain finally stopped, and the first pale edge of dawn crept through the blinds, painting soft gold across two newborns and the man who had just claimed them as his own. Veronica closed her eyes, terrified of how right it suddenly felt. The quiet that follows birth is sacred, they say. Tonight it felt like the hush before a guillotine falls. Veronica lay spent, one newborn asleep on her chest, the other cradled against Lucian's black-suited arm like he'd been born there. The room smelled of blood and orchids and the metallic tang of betrayal. A soft buzz cut the silence. Tony's phone, the one Lucian had silently placed on the rolling tray, lit up with a new message. Lucian didn't move to hide it. He simply watched her with that unreadable calm as she reached out a shaking hand and woke the screen. A single text. No name, just a number saved under a red heart emoji. Enjoy the brats. I'm out. Don't call. Lawyers will be in touch. Below it, a photo. Tony, on a sun-drenched yacht, shirt unbuttoned, champagne flute raised, a woman half his age draped over him like a trophy. The timestamp was 4:12 a.m., Greek time. While Veronica screamed her children into the world, he'd been toasting his freedom. The phone slipped from her numb fingers and clattered to the floor. Something inside her chest cracked open, wide and irreversible. A sound tore out of her half-sob, half-snarl, that startled both babies into thin, startled cries. She curled over her daughter instinctively, shielding the tiny body as if Tony's cowardice could still reach them. Lucian rocked the boy with a slow, natural sway, eyes never leaving Veronica's face. Detached, yes, but not cold. He looked like a man who had waited years to watch justice served and still hated the taste of it. "He really did it," she whispered, voice shredded. "He really left us like trash." Memories assaulted her in merciless flashes, Tony flinching when she asked him to feel the twins' kick. The nights he came home smelling of someone else's perfume and told her she was paranoid. The way he'd started calling the babies the pregnancy instead of our children. The redhead's manicured hand on his arm at last year's gala, while Veronica stood 3 feet away, smiling for cameras like a good billionaire's wife. She had swallowed every lie because love was supposed to forgive. Tonight it had spat in her face and walked away. "I hate him," she rasped, tears falling onto her daughter's downy hair. "God, I hate him." Lucian's voice came low, steady, almost tender. "Then hate him. But don't waste the energy keeping his place warm." He shifted the baby higher against his shoulder, tiny fist curled against the lapel of a suit that cost more than most cars. Veronica wiped her face with the back of her wrist, staring at him through swollen eyes. "Why are you still here, Lucian? What do you want that Tony didn't already take?" For the first time, something raw flickered across his stone-carved features. "I'm not his rival in boardrooms alone, Veronica." His gaze dropped to the boy dozing against his heartbeat, then lifted to the girl on her chest. "I've been watching you since the night he introduced you as his fiancée. I saw what he never bothered to see. The woman strong enough to build an empire and soft enough to break for the people she loves." He took one step closer, voice dropping to a murmur meant only for her. Tony threw away the only thing worth fighting for. "I'm simply picking it up." Veronica's breath caught. The confession hung between them like smoke. "You planned this," she said. Not quite a question. "I planned for the day he proved he didn't deserve you," Lucian corrected. "Tonight he did it faster than even I expected." He looked down at the newborn in his arms, her son, with something fierce and protective that made her chest ache in a way she didn't understand. "From this moment on," he said quietly, "no one touches this family without going through me. Not Tony, not the press, not the past." The baby stirred, letting out a small, distressed sound. Without hesitation, Lucian adjusted his hold, cradling the boy closer, and the crying stopped instantly. Veronica watched, tears still falling, and felt the first terrifying tremor of a truth she wasn't ready to name. The most dangerous man in the room had just become the only one she had left. And somewhere across the ocean, Tony Whitmore raised another glass to a future that no longer included the 3 hearts now beating in perfect, terrifying sync with Lucian Vale's. The twins were swaddled now, side by side in the single bassinet the nurses had quietly wheeled in. 2 tiny chests rising and falling in perfect rhythm. 2 perfect lives that had been born into a war they didn't know existed. Veronica stared at them until her eyes burned, afraid to blink, afraid the moment she did the world would tilt again and they'd vanish like everything else. She felt Lucian before she saw him, the air shifting, the temperature dropping a degree as he moved to the foot of her bed. He hadn't left once, not for coffee, not for air, not even when the nurses offered him a chair. He simply stood guard, a dark sentinel in a room that had become his territory the second he kicked the door in. "I'm not a damsel," she said to the bassinet, voice hoarse. "I don't need rescuing." Lucian's silence was answer enough. She finally looked at him, really looked. The sharp cut of his jaw, the faint shadows beneath those impossible blue eyes, the way his ruined shirt was still unbuttoned at the throat where her son had drooled on Italian silk. He looked exhausted, and invincible at the same time. "I'm a pawn," she whispered. Tony moved me across the board and then flipped the table. "Now you're standing here deciding where I land next. I never signed up for any of this." "No," he said quietly. "You didn't." He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and drew out a slim black envelope, placed it on the blanket over her legs like a gauntlet. Divorce papers. Already signed by Tony in bold, careless ink. Beside them, a second document thicker, sealed with crimson wax bearing an insignia she didn't recognize. "My counteroffer," Lucian said. "Read it when you're ready, or burn it. Your choice." She stared at the envelope like it might bite her. He moved to the bassinet, gaze softening as he adjusted the blanket around the girl's tiny fist. The gesture was so gentle it felt obscene coming from a man who had terrified an entire hospital wing into submission. "I'm not asking for gratitude, Veronica," he said without looking back. "I'm not even asking for trust. I'm telling you how this ends." She laughed, wet, broken, furious. "You don't get to write my ending. Someone has to." He turned then, eyes locking on hers. "Tony left you defenseless in a world that eats the defenseless alive. I won't." The words landed between them like a vow and a threat. She wanted to scream at him, wanted to claw that calm off his face. Instead, she felt the fight bleeding out of her. Exhaustion and grief, and the terrifying weight of two helpless babies dragging her under. "I don't know you," she said, voice cracking. "I don't want to need you." Lucian crossed the room in 3 silent strides and stopped at her bedside. He didn't touch her, but he leaned down until she had no choice but to meet his gaze. "I know every detail of your life Tony ignored," he said. Low and lethal. "I know you sing off-key to the orchids when you think no one's listening. I know you still sleep on the left side of the bed even though he hasn't been in it for months. I know you cried in the shower the night you found the yacht tickets because you were afraid to cry in front of him." Each confession struck like a blade. "I know," he continued, softer now, "that those babies deserve a mother who isn't looking over her shoulder every second wondering who's coming for them next. And I'm the only one standing between you and every shark Tony just threw you to." Tears slipped free again, silent this time. She hated how safe his certainty made her feel. He straightened, the predator sliding back into place. "You will raise your children," he said, voice ringing with finality. "But you will not do it alone." The words settled over her like a brand. She stared at him, at the man who had taken her son into his arms without hesitation, who had watched her break and hadn't looked away, who now stood between her and a future that would have devoured her whole. Tony was gone. Lucian Vale was not. And for the first time since the door had exploded open, Veronica felt the terrifying, undeniable truth sink into her bones. She wasn't sure she wanted him to leave. 6 months later, the city had moved on. The tabloids had new scandals. The lawyers had new graves to dig. Only the penthouse stayed frozen in its own strange, quiet orbit. Veronica leaned in the nursery doorway at dawn, barefoot in Lucian's white dress shirt, sleeves rolled to her elbows, watching the impossible become routine. Lucian Vale, hair tousled, jaw shadowed with yesterday's stubble, sat in the rocking chair, their daughter asleep against his bare chest, tiny fingers curled around the chain of the watch he'd stopped wearing because she liked to chew it. Their son lay sprawled across his thigh, one sock missing, drooling peacefully on a $1,000 suit jacket like it was the softest blanket in the world. He hummed low, off-key, the same lullaby every morning, and the sound wrapped around the room like smoke. He hadn't left. Not once. He'd slept in the guest wing that first month, then the nursery floor, then without discussion, her bed when the nightmares came. He'd learned to mix formula at 3 a.m., to change diapers one-handed while fielding hostile takeover calls with the other. He'd stared down nannies who flinched at his reputation and hired the only one who didn't. He'd stood between the babies and every camera, every lawyer, every ghost of Tony that tried to crawl back. And somewhere along the way, stranger became sentinel, became something she still refused to name. Lucian's eyes lifted, catching hers in the pale light. "You're staring again. You're humming off key again." She countered. but the bite had long since left her voice. He smirked, just a flicker, then brushed his lips across the baby's downy hair. She likes it. Veronica crossed the room, drawn despite herself, and sank onto the ottoman beside them. Her son stirred, let out a sleepy grunt, and she scooped him up automatically. He smelled like milk and Lucian's cologne and home. For a long moment, the only sound was 4 heartbeats, learning how to beat together. "I got the summons," she said quietly. Lucian's rocking slowed. "Tony, deposition next week. He wants visitation." She laughed, sharp and humorless. "Says he's had time to reflect. Wants to meet his children." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Lucian's eyes went arctic. "He can try," he said, voice soft as a blade sliding from its sheath. Veronica looked at the man holding her daughter like she was the most precious thing he'd ever touched. At the boy already reaching for the sound of Lucian's voice. At the life that had formed in the ashes of the one Tony burned down. "I'm not afraid of him anymore," she realized aloud. Lucian's gaze snapped to hers. Searching. "I used to wake up reaching for a man who was never there," she continued, voice steady for the first time in months. "Now I wake up reaching for them." She nodded at the babies. "And you're always already holding them." Something fierce and vulnerable flashed across his face. "I lost control of everything that night," she whispered. "My marriage, my future, my choices. But watching you with them, I think maybe I traded chaos for something stronger." Lucian leaned forward slowly, careful not to wake the baby, and rested his forehead against hers. "I didn't come here to own you, Veronica," he said, rough and low. "I came to make sure no one ever broke you again. If that means I stay forever, I stay." Her breath trembled. "And if I ask you to leave one day?" He pulled back just enough for her to see the truth carved into every hard line of him. "Then I'll leave," he said simply. "But I'll still burn the world down if anyone tries to hurt what's mine." She closed her eyes, felt the warmth of her son against her chest, the steady weight of her daughter in Lucian's arms. Tony's summons sat on the counter downstairs, waiting for an answer. She already knew what it would say. Let him come. Let him see what he threw away. Because Veronica Whitmore, no, just Veronica now, was no longer the woman who begged a coward to stay. She was the woman who decided who was allowed to. And as the sun spilled gold across the nursery, painting them all in the same light, she pressed her lips to her son's head, then without thinking, to Lucian's jaw. A new beginning wasn't gentle. It was claimed. And for the first time in her life, Veronica was the one doing the claiming. Thank you very much for watching. Comment below what you thought and what was the best or worst part. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time.